Hi there, this is Matthew again. I am a governor at Ramon. I'm the Science Link. And I've been doing an NPQ TL, and I was looking at part of the course on misconceptions, which is rife in science, but actually there are misconceptions in all of teaching. And I wanted to discuss with you what are the common misconceptions we have in science, and also how to deal with them. So let's have a look. A lot of my inspiration from this and knowledge comes from, if you look at the QR code, you can get a link. There is a website, which is it's not going to, it's a guest post essentially, from a individual called, let's give credit where credit is due, Annette Taylor, who's a psychologist, and talk through kind of how to deal with misconceptions. So what are misconceptions? Misconceptions is essentially where incorrect knowledge has been embedded through, maybe it's been through watching television, maybe it's just through language that is used, and there is some concept in somebody's head, doesn't matter if it's a child or an adult, but it's not based on truth. And the problem is first of all, it's really hard to get rid of once it gets embedded. And second of all, any new knowledge based on a similar topic is going to be competing against this misconception, and then retrieval becomes really challenging, and long-term retrieval, which is what we call learning, is going to be hindered. So we have to do something when we get misconceptions. Typically in my lessons, it's basically when I'm asking students a question, I might get a response back. That might be a misconception. It might be after doing an assessment, a written assessment, I might see a common misconception in class. And what I'm starting to do is for retrieval practice, multiple choice questions at the beginning of lessons, where 3 of the choices are misconceptions that are common, and there's one correct answer, so I can see where the common misconceptions are. There are going to be loads, and in this slide, which I'm going to share with you, I've collected a few through my schemes of work. But again, you can look these things up on the internet, or you can see them as they arise in class. Although, of course, you need to know the correct science or the correct knowledge to be able to notice the misconceptions. So, in terms of what you do, I like to celebrate misconceptions, but the challenge has been, and I'm changing my teaching approach, is from the article that I read, if you repeat that misconception, you're likely just to embed it further. People will just hear what they remember, and they'll keep that in their head. So any future knowledge will start to compete, like I said, and then you're not going to get long-term learning occurring, which is what we want. We want good retrieval of the correct information. So what do we actually do? I've dubbed this the truth sandwich. So we want to acknowledge a misconception. You can just basically say, oh, that's a misconception. It's actually quite common. A lot of people have it. You don't want to repeat it, but you do want to acknowledge it. And you really don't want the student to be embarrassed from the misconception. And it really is like, oh, thank you. That's a great misconception kind of thing. We want to kind of celebrate it in a way. And then what we do is we want to immediately after that, we want to state or explain what the correct concept is. Okay, so a misconception that I spoke to Ms. Simmons about recently was about adapted versus being to adapt. So a misconception that students have in science is that organisms adapt to their surroundings. Well, that's a misconception. The truth is that through natural selection, there is a variety of different characteristics, and certain individuals already adapted, past tense, due to natural selection, to the environment. They then, you've got natural selection, so those who survive will be those who already adapted. You have to then refute the misconception, explain why it can't be correct. So why the thing that was said before can't be correct is because organisms can't through exercise, gain bigger muscles and pass that on to the next generation. The characteristics are based on genes which are passed on, and those genes change due to mutation. You can't choose to change. You can't get a suntan and then have a child who's darker skinned as a concept. So you refute it, and then you just repeat again what the truth is. So the misconception again is that those individuals that we see, you see that they're well adapted to their environment, and it's due to a past evolutionary event where a change in a population has occurred, but individuals, through their survival, have these traits because they had a ancestry where there was a mutation and they were already adapted. Okay, a bit complex, of course. I probably have to practice myself a little bit, which is what I think I want you to do. Just practice, muddle through it, and hopefully we're going to get better knowledge being embedded while we do this. So what I've done after this is I've got some common misconceptions from some of the topics I believe you're looking at right now. So these are some common ones in space. One of the big ones that we tend to see with regards to forces in space are things linked to gravity. Well, first of all, we don't call the force gravity. We call the force weight. There's a field that creates gravity, and everything with mass has gravity. So that's a common misconception that we have. Is that written here? I'm not sure, but there's a lot of them that you can see here. The moon can only be seen at night. Well, I mean, I've driven to work and seen the moon. The moon is just a reflection of the sun. It just happens to be if you see the moon, if the sun is really, really bright, maybe you wouldn't see it, or maybe it's hidden behind a cloud, but that's a misconception that people have. And where do they get that misconception? It's, kids' storybooks. One I've seen recently is that the sun is yellow. Well, the sun is white. If the sun was yellow, a white piece of paper would look yellow. And the reason why we think the sun looks yellow is because the only time that we're going to look directly at the sun is when it's setting, and it's going through a lot of air, and it happens to be those particles that are in the atmosphere are scattering blue light, and what's left behind are the reds and oranges and yellows. And the more particles we see, the more red a sunset will look, sunrise or sunset. So there's lots of them here for space. I've got some for forces here. Okay, so you can have a look through them. Got the PowerPoint you can use. You can pause this if you want. The human body, the biggest one, I must use this opportunity to tell you, and I blame, to be honest, the national curriculum. The language that people use is that respiration and breathing are the same thing. Mrs. Gren, that kind of thing. Respiration is a release of energy from glucose. That's the definition we use in high school. So respiration is this breaking up of sugars to release energy. All living things do it. It's what defines life. Breathing is linked to muscles, to ventilate, to take in oxygen with a higher concentration, to get it into your blood, and then to release excess carbon dioxide as a consequence of respiration. I think part of this also is the fact that the system that includes breathing is the respiratory system. So a very embedded misconception that I do not blame anyone for, because in just normal language, they mean the same thing, but in a scientific understanding, it's one of the first things we do in high school we have to correct. So you'll see this. I've actually written common misconceptions for 2 different topics here, both based on biology. In both cases, top right hand, you see here, breathing and respiration are the same thing, and then you see the same misconception when we start learning about what respiration is. So we have to keep on to reduce this. All right. Well, I really hope you found that useful, and please do drop me a line at the email that I've given in my introduction video at any point if you have any further ones that you want me to review with you. Thank you very much.